Welcome back to Talking Sports with Brandon. This is NFL Week 12 recap video. And this video, so I didn't make a video after the Thanksgiving game last week and going into the rest of Week 12, but I did put my picks out on Instagram and I did write them down, so it wasn't everyone could see them. It wasn't like I just made it up. So we'll get into those last two picks I made for the Sunday games, but it was a really good week in terms of my picks. So we'll start with that. We'll also recap the Thanksgiving games because I wasn't able to do that, because I'd make a video after the Thursday games, and then we'll recap some of the big games from Sunday as well and some storylines. So picks from last week. Like I said, I did pick all three Thanksgiving Day games, and they went well. I went 2-1 in those games. First one was Bills-Lions. It was plus 9.5 Detroit. They lost 28-25, last second field goal by the Bills to win it. I think I said it in that video, but, the Lions play tough. I mean, they don't, you don't really blow the Lions out. The only game that really happened in was the Patriots game. That's a tough game in New England. They went for it a couple times on fourth down. They tried to do things to not settle for points or try and just punt it away. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot in that game. But for the most part, they've been very competitive, had leads in games, been very close in other games. They've actually won. They won 3 straight going into this game. So it was just I feel like that line was just too much, to be honest. The Bills haven't been playing great as of late. So to be 9.5 on the road as well, in terms of the Bills being minus 9.5, I just thought it was a lot. And they won 28-25, so that was the first win. This game, Allen, again, he seems to be looking not as good as he was before the elbow injury. I think that definitely is affecting him. He's been really good on the ground, though. This one, he had 78 yards and a touchdown, but they did just enough to win this game. They definitely could have lost this game. The Lions had chances to win this, but the Bills with, I think it was like 23 seconds. The Lions kicked the game-tying field goal at 23 seconds left. Bills went right down the field, in part because of a big play to Diggs. I think it was like a 35-yard catch, I believe it was. Let's see exactly how much. It was 36 yards. So they went from their 25 to the Detroit 39 in one play, and then were able to get some more yards. Allen got 12 yards on the ground the next 2 plays, and then kicked a game-winning field goal from 45 to win it. So, at that point, my bet would have hit, but in terms of just the actual two teams, the Bills, they moved to 8-3. Again, a needed win. They're not playing great right now, so they needed that win. And maybe getting this layoff now from playing on a short week to now getting somewhat of a mini bye by playing Thursday, then not playing till next Sunday, it can help them out a little bit. Now, the concerning thing for them is that they lost Von Miller in this game. Seemed to be a worse injury than it is. It's still kind of up in the air. It doesn't look like he's going to play. Actually, they play this Thursday, so it still is kind of, it's not really a mini bye. They'll have their mini bye next week, but doesn't look like he's going to play in that game on Thursday night, Von Miller. And who knows how many games he misses. It could be a couple, could be maybe just this one game. But that's definitely a big injury because he's been playing great for them. He obviously always gets better towards the end of the season as the playoffs come around. So if he's going to be hampered by an injury or just not 100%, then that can definitely, is definitely worrisome for their defensive line, which has been really good. Ed Oliver had a huge game in this one. He stepped up without Miller going out, and then Gregory Rousseau didn't play. So those 3 guys healthy and playing, that's one of the top defensive lines. But if Miller is going to be injured or, again, hampered by an injury, it's going to be tough. They still have a really good defense, no doubt, but having that veteran presence, not even just a veteran presence, but just a difference maker and an X factor on that defense, losing him or just, again, not him being 100% can really hurt. But they seem to be getting better. They seem to be looking a little bit better, and they're going to need it. That division's tough. Miami is leading that division because they already beat the Bills, despite having the same record. The Dolphins, they're a really good team. Now, they play the Niners this week. That will be a tough game for sure, but they're going to have to compete with them right to the end of the season, till when they next play again, which I think is let's see exactly when that game is, because that's going to be a huge game to decide that division. It's December 18th, so in a couple weeks. So who knows what the records look like? Bills play the Patriots and Jets before that. before those two games, and the Dolphins, they played the Niners and the Chargers. So who knows? Maybe they both win each game. Maybe one loses, one other doesn't. But yeah, that's going to be a huge game, December 18th. And when that time does come, we'll definitely talk about it. But that was the first game. So we get the win, 1-0. Second game, Giants-Cowboys. I had Cowboys minus 9.5. This one hurt because the Cowboys did win 28-20, but Giants late backdoor cover with 8 seconds left. They covered this game. They get a touchdown with 8 seconds left to make it from 28-13 to 28-20. The Giants were winning in this game at halftime. They're up 13-7. The Cowboys had 2 interceptions, had a turnover on downs, so almost basically 3 turnovers in the first half. A lot of penalties on them as well. So, things were, despite all of that, the Giants were only up 13-7, so you still kind of had hope and belief that the Cowboys were going to come back and win this, at least in terms of the game. Maybe not the cover at that point, but as soon as the second half started, they fired away. They were gaining a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence. Didn't really look like Giants defense could stop them at one point. Giants and offense went for it on fourth down in their territory, and it's like that was the game. That was the game right there. If they convert it, they keep that drive going. Who knows? But they got points. They just keep the drive. They pin them back. Whatever happens, and if they don't get it, which is what happened, gives the Cowboys a short field. It was only 44 yards away to the end zone, and they capitalized on that opportunity. Went and got a touchdown. And at that point, the game was over. But it's tough for the spread because, like I said, it's 28-13 with 8 seconds left in the game, and you don't get the cover. So unfortunate in terms of the pick. If you want to hear the full recap of the Cowboys, you can check out that video. It will be posted after this one. So definitely check that out if you want to get the full insight and details and specifics from that game. But yes, that game was 28-20, so that was my first loss, first loss of the week, that was it was a really good game. It actually had I think 43 million viewers for that game, which was like the most the NFL's had, and I can't remember exactly how long, but a really long time in terms just of one game. So definitely exciting for that. And the Thanksgiving games as a whole were really, really good games. All of them were close. All of them were like tough games that definitely, it wasn't like a blowout. It wasn't like boring teams. It wasn't anything like that. So the third game of Patriots-Vikings, I had Vikings minus 2.5. This one, Vikings win 33-26. I said in the last video that you get embarrassed like that in your home field. Then you have a short week, so you really got to erase that from your memory. And you're playing a tough physical team in New England, you got to play better. And I knew that they were going to. You don't just get blown out 40-3 and then just come out and do it again. So especially a team that maybe it kind of was a little overhyped and played above their talent level and kind of their expectations, but they're still a good team. They still have weapons on offense. The defense can make plays at times. So it was a back and forth game. A controversial call in this one where Hunter Henry had a touchdown, but it was ruled incomplete, and then they didn't get that touchdown there. And then the Vikings come down and they score. So huge flip there in terms of what the score possibly could have been. But this one, like I said, 33-26, it covered. And it was just, Jefferson had a huge game in this one. That's the difference. Like, you have a top three, I would say, honestly, I think he's a top 3 receiver. I don't think that's a question. So if you have a guy like that, he can just take over games. And that's what he did. He had a couple of huge catches in this game just to completely flip momentum and just make big conversions for the Vikings. So when you have a guy like that, it just makes life way easier. And the Vikings did just enough to win this game. It definitely could have went the other way, like I said. Mac Jones had a really good game in this one. I think he threw for like 380. 2 touchdowns, no picks. Like, he had a really good game. It was just that they just couldn't make enough plays compared to the Vikings. Cousins, 299, 3 touchdowns. Did have 1 pick. It was early in the game, though. But like I said, they just made enough plays to win this game. So that was 2-1 on Thanksgiving. We move into Sunday, where my first game on Sunday was Ravens-Jaguars. Jaguars plus 3.5. This one, I looked at all the games from Sunday, and I didn't really love a lot of them. But this one, I just like the Jaguars at home. I think that they always play better. It doesn't mean that they're going to score a lot of points and just play like a perfect game, but they always play tough. They always play close. And I kind of just saw that. And with the way the Ravens have been playing recently, the Panthers game where they can't even score against the Panthers. They're struggling to put up points. The offense doesn't look great. The defense is holding teams down, but at the same time, it's not like they're doing a great job. I think it's more just the offense is being inept more than anything. But in this game, the Jaguars did win, actually. They won 28-27. They had to do a touchdown drive at the end of the game. It's 27-20 with 2 minutes left in the game. Lawrence has to put a drive together. Probably his best moment as a quarterback in his first 2 years is a game-winning drive under 2 minutes against the Ravens, and then go for two as well to win the game. Definitely his best moment of his career so far. But when they needed one, they got one. And, if you're the Ravens, you're kicking yourself over this game because they had to settle for field goals. I mean, if you look at the yardage on the field goals for Tucker, 27, 29. He hit a 55 and then he hit a 24. That's 3 field goals that are inside 30 yards. Those got to be touchdowns, at least 1 or 2 of them. And this game's a completely different game. Ravens 7-4. People love them, and I just don't. I don't see how they're one of these top AFC teams. Their offense is just very inconsistent a lot, and they really have no one on the outside who's going to scare you at receiver. Even Lamar running the ball, he hasn't been as good as he's been in recent years. Now, in this game, he was 14 for 89, but it wasn't like some huge run that he had. It wasn't some game-breaking kind of play that he made. So they're just not the same offense. The defense, again, it's okay. It's all right. They have some players, but for the most part, it's nothing special. So I don't really see this team doing much in the playoffs. I mean, they may not even win their division. The Bengals. The Bengals did win this week. They beat the Steelers. So now they're both tied at 7-4. Now, the Ravens did beat them head-to-head, which is why they are technically in first place. But I think you kind of have to like the Bengals more. I mean, they're going to get Jamar Chase back seemingly this week. If not, it's for sure next week. But he could have played in last week's game, so it looks like he's going to return to this week. But I like the Bengals more. I mean, I think the quarterback's better. I think the offensive weapons are better, and I think the defenses are pretty similar, to be honest. You could say the coach is better for the Ravens, but at times he hasn't been great either. So I think you have to be leaning Bengals for that division. And if the Ravens are a wild card team, they got to go on the road somewhere. I don't see them winning. Now, it depends who they play, obviously, but it's going to be tough for them to get out of that first game, in my opinion. So they're 7-4. Jacksonville's 4-7. Like I said, defining moment of Trevor Lawrence's career so far. But that was a good win. And again, I just for the cover, I needed they needed a touchdown, and I needed the touchdown for the cover. So even if they got the 2-point conversion, didn't get it, I would have covered because they were at a loss by 1 point or at a won by 1 point. So it worked out for me, worked out for Jaguars, and that put me to 3-1 on the week. Last game on Sunday for me was Texans-Dolphins, -14 Miami. I mean, couldn't have been an easier pick. It actually got close in terms of a backdoor cover situation. The Dolphins won 30-15, so this game was 30-0 at halftime. So, I mean, I was cruising. I mean, no doubt. I didn't think it would be like that this game. I thought it would be, maybe the Texans score like 10 to 14 points at some point in the third quarter, and the Dolphins maybe have 24. Let's say it's 24-10. And then, the Dolphins kind of just get, a touchdown, and they kind of, maybe cause a turnover too. Texans went with, they benched Davis Mills this game. They went with Kyle Allen. It wasn't much better, to be honest. The stats may not look awful. 215, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, but they had no offense going this entire game until even though it's the third quarter, it was garbage time. They got a touchdown there. Then right at the start of the fourth quarter, they got a touchdown as well. So, and the Dolphins, they pulled their starters midway, right to the end of the third quarter, right there. And you could tell they really weren't trying as much. They were killing them through the air, 2 at 300 yards, and basically a half of play. I mean, if you want to say the first 2 drives of the third quarter, you could say that, but they kind of let their foot off the gas. But in terms of recover, they almost let it up. I mean, it was close. I think the Texans had the ball on Miami side of the field, just needing a field goal to break that or to cover it. So it was close, but it did turn out that they did cover the 14 points, and that put us to 4-1 on the week. So huge week. Again, the Dallas game, that could have been 5-0 right there. But even saying that, go to 29, 28, and 3. Huge week. We've had some good weeks recently, and that's what we need to do. We need to have really good weeks. And we're finally over 500. I think it's maybe the first week I was over 500, but even then, it's been a long time. So feels good. Now we just got to keep going forward. But in terms of other games from the week, just games to talk about. I think Bucks-Browns, Browns win this one 23-17 in OT. Embarrassing loss for Tampa Bay. They're controlling this game. Browns can't do anything offensively. It's not like the Bucks really could either, but they had a lead, and the Browns just couldn't do anything. And somehow it was 17-10, and then with 32 seconds left in the fourth quarter, when it was 17-10 with 8 minutes left in the third quarter, all the way to 40 seconds left in the fourth quarter when the Browns scored a touchdown to make it 17-17 to send it to OT. The Bucks just needed to do something, just a field goal, just a touchdown, a long drive, something just to get the clock going, to flip field position, get points. They just couldn't do it. They had many chances, just couldn't get points on the board. Game goes to OT. Bucks get the ball first, and then they have to punt. Browns get it, they punt. Bucks get it again, and then they have to punt. And then finally, the Browns put a touchdown on the board to win it. Terrible loss for the Bucks, especially in a week where the Falcons lost. The Bucks could have been 6-5, a clear lead in that division, a terrible division, but a clear lead in it. Instead they lose this game, still lead the division because they did beat the Falcons head to head, but they're 5-6. And the Falcons are 5-7. They played one more game, but it definitely could have helped a lot if they won this game. But yeah, they lose. Just terrible loss. They're a terrible team. I mean, they have Brady, but the rest of that team is not good. And the Browns 4-7. I mean, again, I think I said it, last week when, Watson, he's going to play in this week's game against the Texans. You need it to be 500, and even if they were 5-6, it gives you a chance in the AFC. The AFC, you can still maybe make a wild card at 5-6, especially if Watson comes back and plays like Deshaun Watson with the weapons that they do have offensively, and the defense hasn't been great so far this season. But if they can just string together a couple of good games and put together some wins for this final stretch run of the season, who knows what could happen? Especially now with a top 7 quarterback. When he last played, he was a top 7 quarterback. So it's you just wish. I mean, that Jets game. There's been multiple games this season that it's if you just won that game, you're 5-6. They could easily be 6-5 this season. Just very tough losses for them. This one again, they probably should have lost, but they did come back and win. So like I said, maybe evens out. But them being 4-7 with Watson coming back, that's not what they intended for. When again, they knew he was going to be suspended, and that's why they went Brissett, because they knew he's good enough to lead us to wins, and he didn't play bad, to be honest. The defense wasn't great multiple times, and he did have some turnovers as well, but he definitely was not a bad quarterback for those 11 games for them. But yeah, Watson's coming back, so that'll be an interesting storyline to follow as the season goes along. I think another game to talk about would be Raiders Seahawks. This game, 40-34, Raiders win in OT. Josh Jacobs, monster game. He runs for 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, has 300 yards of total offense. Wins it on an 86-yard touchdown run in OT. Took this game over. Again, I said it was Seattle. They played great. They got off this really good start. Niners were struggling. Rams, now we know that they're a bad team, but it's still early in the season. You just weren't sure. And it looked like the Seahawks maybe win this division, or at least have a lot of wins. And I said, let's check back in a couple weeks. Geno was playing great. The defense was flying around, making plays. They're winning these close games. They're winning games. I said, let's check back in a couple weeks and see what the record is. And now they're 6-5. That's kind of I think they got off to such a hot start. The team that they really are is probably a little less than 500. That's really what they probably are. Maybe 6-7 wins. If you were to start the season over and be this is really what you should play at, it's probably a 6 or 7 win team. They'll probably end up, they play the Rams this week. That should be a win. I mean, now Aaron Donald's out for what seems to be the rest of the season. Who knows what happens, but he has a high ankle sprain, I think it was. So he's out at least a couple weeks. Do you really want to bring him back in a season where you're 3-8? I wouldn't think so. Stafford's out, Cooper Kupp's out, Allen Robinson's now out. So then they play the Panthers. So like if you win these next 2 games, okay, you're 8-5. But it's definitely possible. But then you play the Niners, the Chiefs, Jets, and then Rams to end the season. So it's gonna get tough after these next couple of games. So you definitely have to win these next 2. If you split them, being 7-6, I think you probably lose those next 2 games. So then you're 7-8 all of a sudden, and you need to win most likely those last 2 games to get into a wild card spot. Even then, it's still tough at 9 wins. I think 9 wins gets you in, and they would have the tiebreaker over a Giants. They did beat them, but it would still be tough. 10 is a guarantee you're in the playoffs. 9 is you need help from other people losing or tiebreakers. The Raiders, not much to say about them, to be honest. They're 4-7. I still don't see them making a big push. Even this game, Carr threw 2 picks. I don't see them still being a good team. They still don't have weapons. You still have Jacobs and Adams, but Waller's out, Renfro's out. Offensive line, Jacobs has been great in the run game, but it's still not a great offensive line unit, despite what Jacobs is doing on the ground. But, still a really exciting game in that 4 o'clock window there. And then I think Eagles-Packers, Sunday Night Football. This game was a back-and-forth game. The first quarter alone, it was 14-13. Green Bay, actually, because the Eagles missed an extra point. But, Jalen Hurts had like 100 yards rushing in the first quarter. He ended up with 157. Miles Sanders had, I think, 130, I think it was. They ran for 300 yards on the ground. It was still back and forth all the way. It was, at one point, it was 34-23. It was actually 34-20 Philadelphia, but then it got all the way to 37-30. Rodgers got injured in this game. He was dealing with a thumb. He hurt his rib. He had to come out for the game. As soon as Jordan Love comes in, it's a 63-yard touchdown to Christian Watson, and then drives him down to a field goal with a minute left to make it a 7-point game. They couldn't get the onside kick, so obviously the game was over. But he didn't look bad. He's been on the bench all these years, but. And last year he started that game, or was it last year? I think it was, where he started that game against the Chiefs. That was an ugly game. Tough spot in Kansas City on the road. Didn't really know he was starting because I think that's when Rodgers had COVID. So definitely a tough spot, but he didn't look good. This one he looked, really good. And they said that, in preseason and training camp, OTAs and everything, they said he looked a lot better. Now, it looks like Rodgers is going to play their next game this upcoming week. But you definitely have to throw the possibility out there that they're 4-8. They really needed to win this game. A tough game on the road against Philadelphia, but they really needed this game in order to keep their season alive, because they'd be, if they're 5-7, you have a chance. You do. With Rodgers at quarterback, they play the Bears, the Rams, like that, that should be 2 wins in a row. So then, if you did beat Philadelphia, you win those 2 games, you're 7-7 all of a sudden. Who knows what could happen? But being 4-8, if you do lose one of these next 2 games, your season's for sure over. It probably is over right now, but it's for sure over at that point. So you definitely have to beg the question of, if they lose to Chicago this week with Rodgers starting, because they do expect him to start, do you just go Love the rest of the season? See what you got? Again, he's been on the bench these years. You might as well see if you have him. They just re-signed Rodgers, but there's ways to move off him. You could, there's ways to manipulate that contract and way to move him from the team if you want to go that route. But you at least got to see what you have in Love. If you want to trade him, if you want to trade Rodgers and have Love be the guy, if Love doesn't look good and you know that you don't even have the guy, you got to figure something out. So I would definitely expect the last couple games that Love would be starting, unless the Packers make a run and they win out. But again, that's probably not going to happen. They're not that good of a team. But so they're 4-8. Eagles 10-1. Still look shaky. These last couple of games have been shaky games for them. It's definitely not smooth sledding. They play the Titans this week. That's going to be a tough game. If the Titans, Henry hasn't even really been that dominant the last couple of weeks. Sometimes that's scary. When a guy like that hasn't had monster games, you're kind of just expecting it to happen. So you don't really want that against you. Eagles have a good run defense, but it's a different animal when you're facing Henry. Eagles 10-1, still leading the NFC, still leading the league in wins and record. But those are probably the games I wanted to talk about, highlight from the week. I'll make my picks for Week 13 in the next video. And again, hopefully we have another. As long as we go 3-2, that's all I want. 3-2, keep it above 500, keep a winning pattern going. But there's gonna be some good weeks, some good games this week, I should say. Like I said, that Dolphins-Niners game, that's gonna be a really good game from this week. So we'll talk all about it in the next video. Like I said, check out the Cowboys video from the Thanksgiving game. That'll be posted most likely the day after this one is posted. And yeah, later in the week, you'll check out the preview to Week 13. So I want to say thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.